You see how fluffy that is, that interior crumb? Super light, but packed full of stuff that's like not gonna make you feel like you need a nap in 20 minutes. Oops. Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today, I'm not giving you a dessert recipe. I'm actually switching gears. I'm going to make a full breakfast for 4, specifically for the holidays, because if you're hosting people and you're having family over, you need to cook for a crowd. So I'm gonna mix up a batch of my whole grain and nut pancakes, some bacon, some eggs, breakfast. I actually love cooking breakfast. I love preparing it. I almost like making it more than I like eating it because I'm not like huge on like eating a big breakfast. I just sort of like my coffee first thing in the morning. This is kind of a variation on pancakes that Harris and I cook sometimes. It has some whole grain, some nuts in it, so it feels like a little bit more wholesome than your average kind of all white flour pancakes. Plus I have some great thick cut bacon. We're gonna fry a couple eggs. I'm gonna do the whole thing on a griddle, which is great if you're feeding a lot of people, but everything's really easy and really good. So for the pancakes, the ingredients, I have here all in one bowl, some toasted pecans, some white flour, and some whole grain flour. You could use all different kinds of whole grain flour, wheat, rye, buckwheat, whatever. A couple of eggs, 2 cups of buttermilk, some melted cooled butter, kosher salt, a pinch of nutmeg, baking powder and baking soda, a little bit of demerara sugar. Then for cooking, I have some veg oil, a little butter, for serving some maple syrup. And then I also have a few extra eggs and bacon for doing the whole spread. The special equipment that I'm using is a griddle. I have a long griddle that's gonna fit over 2 burners. If you have an electric griddle, you could use that. I'm also gonna use a food processor just to grind everything up for my pancakes because I'm basically incorporating nuts into the batter. If you don't wanna use a food processor, you can still make this. I would just replace the nuts with almond flour and then it's already ground for you. Before I get into the episode, I want to take a minute to thank our partners at Made In for sponsoring this episode. So today I'm going to be cooking on the Made In carbon steel griddle. This is a piece that I love. Maybe you saw our episode where I took it outside and cooked over a live fire to make some breakfast sandwiches. Today I'm using it on my induction cooktop. It's compatible with all types of heat sources, which I love. It is heat safe up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. One thing I love about carbon steel is it's naturally nonstick. And it's so much lighter than traditional cast iron, so it's super easy to maneuver. Now you can get it in a set with this lid, as well as the Made In press. Great for things like smash burgers or smashing potatoes. You can get them so crispy on the Made In carbon steel griddle. So check out the link below. I hope you check out their entire line of carbon steel, but also their stainless clad and nonstick. It's all such wonderful products that I use in my kitchen every day. Harris makes pancakes a lot and he loves to kind of like really pump them up with a lot of kind of whole grains and nuts. So I'm doing a version of that today, but it's kind of just a spin on a traditional buttermilk pancake, super easy. So I'm using a little bit of white flour, which helps to promote like fluffiness and just gives you that texture that you want, but I'm also supplementing it with some whole grain flour. So I actually have here a mix of whole wheat and buckwheat, just stuff that I had around the kitchen. And I'm also adding a cup of toasted nuts. I like pecans, that's my favorite flavor. You could use like toasted almonds or toasted walnuts. Last night I toasted the pecans. I just put them in a 350 oven, actually my toaster oven, for like 8 minutes or so. They smelled golden, they smelled nutty and they looked golden brown when they were done. And now I'm gonna actually just put everything in the food processor because I wanna grind them up. I think having the nuts kind of finely ground in with that flour mix, it makes the pancakes really tender, it adds a little bit of richness and of course a lot of flavor. So if you don't want to use your food processor and you just want to kind of stir everything together in a bowl, you can supplement this with an equal amount of almond meal. That's totally fine. Or like another nut meal if you have it. But I'm just going to go ahead and grind it fresh. I like having the sort of fresh toasted nuts in with this mix. And I'm just going to add my other dry ingredients to get them incorporated. I'm using a pinch of nutmeg, nutmeg is not really a spice that I bake with a lot because I find it really overpowering, but it just actually goes really well in pancakes. I'm adding a little bit of baking soda. That baking soda interacts with the acid in the buttermilk, helps to initiate the kind of rise of the pancakes. Then some baking powder, kosher salt, just to season everything. So I'm gonna grind this, and I'm just gonna process it and kind of pulse it until everything's finely ground. So I can smell how toasty it smells. It smells so good. I know that these are gonna be super flavorful. I don't Just want the flavor to come from like adding maple syrup basically. Nuts are finely gone. There's some slightly larger pieces, like there's one, this little piece is like maybe the size of a lentil, but the rest of the pieces are pretty fine. So I'm happy with that. You'll have like a little bit of texture in there from the bigger pieces of nuts. So then this can go back in your bowl. It smells so good. The combination of pecans and maples is really good. I think walnuts would also be really good, but any nut that you prefer, you could do hazelnut. Just make sure they're fresh. You know, if you've had nuts for a long time in your pantry, often they go rancid because of the oils. So store them in the freezer. And if you're not sure, I would say just get fresh. So I have 3 large eggs. I go with a very egg-heavy batter. This is something Harris and I have kind of realized over time is often when you're making a pancake with whole grain in it, that whole grain flour is going to absorb a lot of liquid and can dry out the pancakes. And one way to keep things just kind of supple and not dry is by doing a very kind of eggy batter. It almost goes into like crepe territory. I'm using 3 whole eggs. I'm adding just a couple of tablespoons of demerara sugar. It's like less processed and refined than white sugar. I love the flavor and it still dissolves relatively quickly. So I'm just gonna whisk all this up until the eggs are streak free. And I have 2 cups of buttermilk here. This is a local buttermilk from a local dairy, full fat buttermilk. So it's often you see buttermilk in the supermarket is low fat, like 1% or so. So this is like a particularly rich buttermilk. You can see it's super thick, almost like yogurt consistency. You can use any buttermilk you can find, but just know that if it's like a thinner buttermilk, it's gonna look a little different than the texture of this batter, which is fine. So once that's broken up, I'm gonna add, I have butter here that's melted and cooled. And it's best to make sure everything's room temperature, not because it's going to affect it so much, but because if you add melted butter to like cold eggs, it's just going to harden. Everything incorporates more easily when it's the same temperature. And then my buttermilk. So simple, like 2-bowl kind of pancake recipe, very standard. So then I'm going to make a little bit of a well in the center, my dry ingredients. It's pretty sort of like standard operating procedure to do wet into dry. That forms fewer lumps. And one of the keys you've probably heard this said about pancakes is like you want to only mix to combine and you can leave lumps in it. You know, a couple little lumps are fine. Those pretty much work themselves out during cooking. So I'm just going to start whisking from the center, working my way out. One thing we'll add to this sometimes is like, sometimes we have like ground a meal of some kind, like a flax seed or ground hemp seeds. We'll add some of that. That will change the texture a little bit. So just know that if you're adding like a flax seed, you might have to add a couple extra tablespoons of buttermilk to this. Okay, so I don't want to really mix more than that. I've just incorporated all of the dry ingredients. I'm going to fold it once or twice just to make sure I have no pockets. This batter is relatively thick. If you have a thinner batter, if you have a thinner batter because maybe you had thinner buttermilk or you're using like a different variation of flour and you feel like the pancakes are a little bit too thin when you add them to the griddle, let it sit for a minute because that buttermilk will kind of have a thickening effect. Come back 10 minutes later, you have something that's set up a little bit. I'm gonna let this rest for a few minutes and I'm gonna move over to the stove. I'm gonna get my griddle going, get that heating, and then I'm gonna start actually the bacon while this sits, and then I'll start cooking the pancakes, and I'm gonna use a mixture of oil and butter. One of the great things about the griddle is that it fits over 2 burners. So I'm gonna have 1 burner going on kind of medium for the pancakes and 1 burner a little bit lower for the bacon. So that's what I'm gonna start doing. With pancakes, it's like use a lot of oil so you can really get them crispy on the outside, and a little bit of butter for flavor. And the first batch isn't as good, but like once you kind of have to get into a rhythm with it, you know, regulating the heat and getting it dialed in, but then that's it. So I want to get my griddle preheating. I have it across 2 burners and it's a nice large griddle. So I have kind of the opportunity for 2-zone heating. So I'm going to do 1 zone kind of like medium low. That medium low will be for bacon because I want that to go kind of low and slow. And then the other zone will be kind of medium high, and that'll be for the pancakes. I put a sheet tray with a rack on top, just on that middle oven rack. And that's gonna be a kind of warming zone because if you're cooking for a crowd, I mean, you can have people kind of seated, like eating pancakes as they come out, but if you wanna serve everything at once, you need a kind of holding area for the pancakes as they finish. So I'm gonna put the oven just on 200, very low, and it'll just be kind of warming. Not hot enough to like continue to cook them so that they dry out and get like hard on the outside. So I'm gonna get my bacon down. I'm not gonna put any additional fat on the pan on that side because the bacon has all of its own fat. This is this thick cut bacon. It's from a local Hudson Valley store. This breakfast is basically for 4. And of course you could always scale up the quantities. How many pieces of bacon for 4 people? 8? I can always add more because bacon shrinks so much. This is thick cut, so I think it'll be like on the kind of slightly softer, chewier side, but with crispy edges. So it's kind of just depending on the bacon and your preference. So now here I have this side of the griddle a little bit hotter for the pancakes. A neutral oil that Harris and I keep around is extra virgin avocado oil, which is super expensive. He orders it wholesale, but it's a great cooking oil. So I'm gonna do a combination of avocado and a little bit of butter on the griddle. I don't think it's quite hot enough. Turn it up a little bit. The bacon's starting to give a little sizzle. So we'll do a first pancake test. This is probably not more than like a 2-ounce ladle level. So I'm probably doing maybe like 3-ounce scoops. Oh, I'm getting a little hot. I gotta turn my front zone down. It's a little bit of a sacrificial first pancake. I would call it burned. It's a little burnt. The smoke coming out. It's a little hot. I turned it down. This is a fish spatula, sometimes called a turning spatula. It's great for flipping things. And I love that with the carbon steel, unlike a nonstick, you can use a metal utensil, which is really great.
These are some of the best pancakes I've ever had.
Oh my God, thanks, Harris.
I'm not kidding.
So the telltale sign that a pancake is ready to be flipped is that the surface has gone from shiny to a little bit matte, like it's lost its sheen. And that when the bubbles pop, the batter doesn't fill in where the bubble was. It leaves a little bit of a hole. So that's what I'm kind of looking for.
Are you getting nervous about flipping?
I'm thinking about it. I kind of like that the pancakes on this side will like mingle a little bit with the bacon fat. But I think when you're frying pancakes, you really want to fry them. You need a good amount of fat in the pan. I hate flipping. Ah! That side looks good. The rest of it's a little under, but we'll fix that. All right, this one's done. Put this in the oven. This one is the chef's snack because I kind of screwed it up. So I'm adding a couple extra strips of bacon. I made a little room because they rendered a little bit, so they shrunk. Ooh, hello. This would be the point at which if you were adding like blueberries or chocolate chips or other chopped nuts or banana slices, whatever, you could add them now. So it looks good. I'm gonna flip this pancake. That's what I have a hard time with, is getting the spatula like fully underneath it. So see that kind of dark ring kind of thing? That's what I'm looking for. But I just tilted the griddle to get like some of that bacon grease migrating over to the pancake side. I'm like right at medium for the pancakes, right at 5, and my induction goes from 1 to 9. So medium, slightly medium high. I have maybe just 1 or 2 pancakes left. The bacon is basically done. So some of the pieces, see golden brown on both sides, I'm gonna remove. I'm not actually draining them on paper towels. I have found that draining on paper towels actually, I think, reduces crispiness. I feel like little tiny, this is my theory, tiny pockets of steam accumulate like in the texture of the paper towel, and it just doesn't crisp up the way it does if you just let it kind of like, you know, sit on like a hard surface. All right, so I'm gonna take off the rest of the bacon as it finishes. It's basically done. And then I'm gonna leave the fat right where it is and do the eggs on that bacon side, fried in the bacon fat. And it's not just that like the bacon fat makes it taste good, even though it does. It's that it's kind of like a low waste, you know, you use what you have kind of approach. Sorry, you now had to wait like several hours for your breakfast. Last pancake, last piece of bacon just came off. The pancakes look so good. This dark ring, I have a feeling some people at home might be like, that's a little too done. I don't think so. I think that color with the kind of rest of it being like dark golden brown, that's perfect. That's gonna be such a nice crispy edge, which you only get from using a good amount of fat in your skillet or on your griddle. Now I'm gonna get each of them going, each of the burners going on medium high. I have 4 eggs. Do you think 4 eggs is good, 1 per person?
No.
Someone can't eat 2 eggs, 3 pancakes, and 2 slices of bacon? They can?
Is that a challenge?
All right, we're gonna cook more eggs. We're gonna cook more eggs, I guess. I was gonna do 1 egg per person, but I've just been told by the 3 people around me, don't look at the feathers on the eggs. All right, let's get these cracking, literally. It's a nice looking griddle. All right, let's give these a little bit of salt and pepper. Also, how nice are our eggs? Then some salt. Oh, they smell so good. So the bottoms are starting to get crispy. I know that I have like good cooking on the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid on. So see all the steam coming off of this griddle? When you put the lid on, you get like a little bit of convection, like that the lid will actually kind of heat up. It's just gonna trap the steam. It's gonna like force heat back onto the surface. So you can get something a little bit like an oven effect. Let's take a look. Ooh, very nice. Okay, oh, it looks so good. So see how this edge is curling right there? It's super crispy underneath. The white has gone opaque over top of the yolk, so I know that it's set. This is like my ideal doneness for a sunny side up egg. It looks so good. I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna grab a platter for the eggs. I'm gonna grab my pancakes out of the oven. Everything is still hot. Looks so good, and we're gonna eat breakfast. It is impressively kind of nonstick. Like these eggs are just sliding right off. They're stuck to each other, but they're not stuck to the griddle. Yum. When we all shoot together, me, Minnie, Cal, we have breakfast before we shoot, but today I'm making breakfast. So this is our first shoot of the day. No one's eaten yet. So everyone's super hungry. And also, not surprisingly, it took longer than I thought. So point is, we're all hungry and I really want to eat. I'm gonna start with a couple strips of bacon. I love when it becomes like stained glass bacon. Start with one pancake, that crispy ring. I'm so excited about it. So these were warming in the oven and like they didn't dry out. I can just hold them and feel them and feel that they're like still nice and soft. And then I'm gonna get a nice crispy sunny egg. Talk about stained glass. I like this one. A little bit of butter on my pancake, almost just to like glaze it. And then a little bit of maple. I don't like a lot of maple, but a little bit just to sweeten it ever so slightly. All right, I'm gonna taste the pancake first. I like it when the butter kind of mingles with the maple syrup. I'm gonna get that edge. You can like hear the fork moving through that crispy edge. Super fluffy on the inside. I just feel like it's something different than your kind of like that diner pancake that's like super even golden brown and soft all over. Having that crispy edge is so key. Pancakes I can get behind. Super crispy bacon. I'm just gonna rip off some of that. The lace, the egg lace. Crispy everywhere. So good. But then like soft yolk, soft interior of the pancake. It's really easy to cook. This kind of breakfast for a crowd, I would say this was for 4. I don't know how many this looks like it would feed, but a lot. So I love being able to make everything all on my made-in griddle. So easy. You know, I got to like use the bacon fat to crisp the eggs and everything kind of happened in one place. I wasn't like torn in a bunch of different directions, waiting for certain things to finish. I love that warming trick of keeping your pancakes in a low oven while everything else finishes. And then here you are, a hot breakfast served all at once. So thank you to our partners at Made In, makers of the fantastic griddle, plus a full line of carbon steel, stainless clad, and nonstick cookware. This is really the perfect kind of entertaining breakfast for the holiday season, but also perfect any time of year. So thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's let the crew eat.
Good.